Welcome to the SA Mining Desk, your essential partner in understanding South Africa's mining sector. We're a platform dedicated to simplifying the intricate world of mining, from government regulations and groundbreaking judgments to essential industry reports. We deliver clear, concise information to equip you for every step of your mining journey. Join your host, he unpacks the mining sector for us.
Hi everyone, and welcome to SA Mining Desk, your partner in navigating the South African mining sector. In today's episode, we're discussing the process of applying for and being issued with a mining right in South Africa. The Department of Mineral and Petroleum Resources, or DMPR, is the government institution responsible for issuing these rights. So what exactly is a mining right? A mining right is an authorization that allows the holder to mine a specific mineral in a specific area for a maximum period of 30 years. This right can be renewed for a further 30 years. It's also known as a social license to mine because it requires the holder to contribute to the socioeconomic development of the surrounding community throughout the life of the mine. Furthermore, a key objective of this right is to empower historically disadvantaged persons to meaningfully participate in the mining sector. The application process is regulated by two primary laws: the Mineral and Petroleum Resources Development Act, or MPRDA, which sets out the rules for applying for and being granted a mining right, and the National Environmental Management Act, or NEMA, which ensures that any mining activity adheres to established environmental principles promoting sustainable development. It's important to note that the DMPR has been the authority for processing environmental authorizations related to mining since December 2014. However, any appeals regarding a DMPR decision on an environmental authorization, or EA, are the mandate of the Minister of the Department of Forestry, Fisheries, and Environment, or DFFE. When you apply for a mining right under the MPRDA, you must also apply for an environmental authorization under NEMA. Both applications are submitted to the DMPR. The purpose of the EA is to assess, manage, and reduce potential environmental and social risks linked to your mining activities. The full application process is broken down into 6 main phases, and we'll go through each one step by step. Before we begin, it's important to note that you don't have to have prospected for the mineral of interest to apply for a mining right, though it is highly recommended. Also, in South Africa, you don't have to own the land to be granted a mining right. This is because the mineral resources of the country belong to all South Africans, and the government holds them in custody on our behalf. Let's begin. Preparing the application and research. The first step is to decide on the mineral you want to mine and determine the demand, market, and potential locations. Institutions like the Council for Geoscience, or CGS, have information that will point you in the right direction. Next, you'll need to identify the specific area you want to apply for. Make sure the area doesn't overlap with residential areas, public roads, or railways, and that the land is not protected by law. You should also check the availability of the land with the DMPR using the Free Request for Access to Information form. This helps confirm whether the land is already under an accepted application or an existing right, as this may negatively impact your application. However, remember that the information provided is only relevant to the point it was shared, since new applications are lodged every day. Another important thing to note when choosing an area is to find out which of the 9 DMPR regional offices the land falls under. Lodging your application at the wrong office can negatively affect it. Last but not least, it's to your advantage to check the applicable land rights for the area you're interested in. For example, check with the municipality what the land is zoned for. Land zoning dictates the types of development and activities that are permitted in different areas to promote orderly development. You should also check with the Department of Land Reforms and Rural Development if the land falls under informal land rights. This is crucial because consultation with parties who hold informal land rights requires their consent, in the Interim Protection of Informal Land Rights Act, or IPILRA, must be considered. Also, check with the Department of Agriculture to see if the land has been declared an agricultural area in terms of the Preservation and Development of Agricultural Land Act. This may require an additional authorization, such as an agroecosystem authorization.
Check also with Petroleum Agency South Africa, PASA, to confirm that the area for which you have applied is not the subject of an existing right issued by that agency. If you are informed that an existing right does exist, it is to your advantage to consult with the identified right holder and submit the results of that consultation to the department.
Finally, do an environmental screening using the web-based environmental screening tool provided by the DFFE. This tool helps you decide on the environmental assessment process that must be undertaken, including the required environmental studies. Once you have decided on the mineral and the land, the next step is to prepare the required documents. These include company documents or certified ID copy, depending on whether you're applying as a person or a company, resolution appointing a person the department will communicate with, Regulation 2.2 plan, which is an aerial map of the proposed area, documentary proof of access to funding and technical expertise, mine work program, which is a business plan describing where, when, and how the mining activities will be conducted. A template for the MWP is available on the DMPR website. Social and Labor Plan, SLP, which outlines how you plan to contribute to the socioeconomic conditions of the surrounding communities and your employees. BEE compliance documents, which prove that the applicant has ensured meaningful participation of historically disadvantaged persons. This meaningful participation is kept at a minimum of 30%. HDP refers to any person, category of person, or community disadvantaged by unfair discrimination before the Constitution took effect. Environmental Screening Tool Report, completed application for environmental authorization, and lastly, a non-refundable application fee of 11,000 Rand. This amount may be higher depending on the EA concerned.
This completes Phase 1, which brings your application to Phase 2, lodging the application. Applications are submitted online through the South African Mineral Resources Administration Database, or SAMRAD. You'll need to register on the system, fill in all the required information, select the area, and upload all your documents in PDF format. Finally, you will be required to pay the application fee. Please take care when working on the system. The information you input is what the department will use to assess your application. Once lodged, you'll receive a system-generated acknowledgement letter with an application identification number. This letter does not mean your application has been accepted. It simply means it has been lodged successfully. From the date you lodged your application until the date it's finalized, either granted or refused, the process takes, on average, 14 months, assuming there are no objections or appeals. Now that you've lodged the application, it moves to Phase 3, Preliminary Assessment.
The DMPR has only 14 days to either accept or reject your application. Let's start with when your application is accepted. First, this doesn't mean you can start mining, it just means your application is moving to the next phases of assessment. You'll get an acceptance letter with instructions, which may include whether your application is competing with another, which means they were received on the same day. In such instances, preference is given to HDP applicants. The need for consultation with interested and affected parties, or IA&P. These are people who will or are likely to be affected by your application, including landowners, lawful occupiers, or surrounding communities. This consultation must last at least 30 days and should give IA&P a reasonable opportunity to raise concerns, use the most effective method of communication, and make all relevant information available to the IA&P. With the acceptance of your application, the DMPR also publishes a public notice calling for comments on your application. This notice is displayed on the department's notice board and in public institutions such as local municipalities, magistrate offices, schools, or libraries for a period of 30 days. If comments are received, such as an objection, the regional manager will refer it to the Regional Mining Development and Environmental Committee, or RMDEC. This committee will adjudicate the objection and make a recommendation to the minister.
Both the objector and yourself will be called to make a representation to the committee before a recommendation is made. It's important to note that any environmental-related objections, such as noise level or dust concerns, are referred to you to address within the environmental reports you will submit. When your application is rejected, it won't be processed any further. There are a variety of reasons this can happen, such as an existing right for the same mineral in the applied-for area, or lodging the application at the wrong regional office. You'll receive a rejection letter with the reasons. If you're not happy with the decision, you can appeal to the Director General of the DMPR. Appeals cost 500 Rand and must follow a prescribed format. Note that an appeal does not automatically suspend the decision taken on your application. In your appeal, you must specifically apply for the suspension of the decision. Moving on to Phase 4, mid-assessment of the application.
At this stage, different components of the DMPR assess your application for compliance in areas like environmental compliance, social and labor plan, mine work program, and empowerment of HDP. Let's unpack them one by one, starting with environmental compliance. At this point, if you have not yet appointed an Environmental Assessment Practitioner, or EAP, you must appoint one at your own cost. An EAP is an independent expert registered with the Environmental Assessment Practitioners Association of South Africa, or EAPASA. The EAP will compile all the environmental reports for you. Shortly after your application is accepted, you will receive an acknowledgement letter with instructions, including consultation and report submission deadlines. When calculating due dates, NEMA includes weekends but excludes public holidays. Also, the period from December 15th to January 5th is excluded from the calculation of due dates. Depending on the proposed activity, your application can follow various processes, but today we are focusing on the Scoping and Environmental Impact Reporting process, or SNEIR. You must submit a scoping report, which has to go through a 30-day consultation process within 44 days. The scoping report is the baseline for completing the Environmental Impact Assessment Report. The DMPR has 43 days after receiving the scoping report to review its content and either accept or reject it. If the scoping report is accepted, you will have 106 days to submit the Environmental Impact Assessment Report, or EIA, which must be linked to an environmental management program. The EIA must have gone through a 30-day public consultation process. The EIA studies the potential environmental impact of the proposed activity on the environment and affected parties and proposes measures to minimize and manage that impact. It may include various other specialist reports identified by the Environmental Screening Report. Following the submission of the EIA and EMP, the DMPR has 107 days to either accept your application or refuse to issue the EA. If it is accepted, you will be required to pay a financial provision. This is an amount paid as a form of security to ensure that you will rehabilitate the area as per the approved rehabilitation plan. This amount is held in security by the DMPR and is reviewed annually until you are issued with a closure certificate. It can be provided using a variety of forms, including a cash deposit, a bank guarantee, there is a standard template for these, or a trust fund. Once you have paid the financial provision, the EA will be issued to you and it will list the terms and conditions. Note that the issuing of the EA does not mean you can begin mining, it simply means your application has met the environmental requirements. Upon receiving the EA, you must notify all I&P that it has been issued. The I&P may lodge an appeal with the Minister of the DFFE if they are not satisfied with the decision. This appeal suspends the processing of your application until it has been finalized. Both you and the DMPR will be given an opportunity to respond to the grounds of the appeal. If you fail to submit any of the prescribed documents within the set time frame, your EA application will lapse, which will negatively impact your mining right application. If you foresee that you won't meet the deadlines, you can appeal to the DMPR for an extension detailing the reasons for your request. The DMPR will then consider your request. If the EA is refused, this will have a negative impact on your mining right application. If you are not satisfied with the refusal, you can also submit an appeal to the Minister of the DFFE outlining the grounds of your appeal.
Now, let's move on to the Social and Labor Plan, or SLP. The purpose of the SLP is to provide a means by which mining right holders can contribute to the socio-economic development of their operating areas and labor-sending areas. It also aims to promote employment and advance the social and economic welfare of all South Africans. You must consult meaningfully with the mine community and INAP on the content of the social and labor plan. This consultation must follow the process in Chapter 6 of the EIA regulations. The consultation period must last for a period of 30 days, and proof of this consultation, including an endorsement letter from the local municipality of the identified mine community project, must be submitted together with the revised SLP to the DMPR. Last but not least is the Mine Work Program. In this process, the DMPR looks at a variety of aspects, including the proposed mining method, the production scale, the resource statement, the viability of the proposed project, access to financial and technical skills. Finally, how you plan to empower HDP will also be assessed. Note that the transaction must facilitate the meaningful participation of the HDP, and some economic value must flow to the HDP in exchange for holding the 30% stake. All the processes outlined above run concurrently, with environmental compliance often taking the longest. You will receive instruction letters from the different components, and it is important to respond to each one in a timely manner. The outcome of all these processes will determine the final outcome of your application, which takes us to Phase 5, the final assessment.
This is where the department decides to either refuse or grant your mining right application. Let's start with refusal. If your application is refused, it was not successful. You will receive a refusal letter detailing the reasons. If you are not satisfied with the decision, you can lodge an internal appeal with the DMPR. The refusal of your application brings the process to an end. If your application is granted, you'll receive a letter outlining the mineral, land, and duration of the right, as well as steps to prepare for its execution. Generally, the department will give you 30 days to prepare for this. Although it is not a requirement, we strongly recommend that you inform all interested and affected parties of the decision to grant the application. You can do this by sending them notices and publishing a notice in at least one local newspaper, keeping records of this process. This notice should state that you have been granted a mining right, the mineral, the duration, and inform them that they can appeal to the DMPR if they are not happy with the decision. This will save you a lot of trouble and costs in the future if the decision is challenged. Execution means signing a legally binding contract with the DMPR before a public notary, whom you must appoint at your own cost. This contract must be submitted for registration at the Mineral and Petroleum Titles Registration Office, or MPTRO, within 60 days of being executed. Once registered, the mining right becomes a limited real right. Only after execution are you permitted to begin mining. The issued EA forms part of the terms of the mining right and is valid until a closure certificate is issued to you. You apply for a closure certificate once you have completed mining activities or if you cease mining activities with no intention to resume. Congratulations, you are now a holder of a mining right. This moves us to the last stage, Phase 6, Obligations, Rights, and Restrictions.
Your obligations include giving the landowner or occupier at least 21 days written notice before starting mining. This notice must state the date and time of entry into the land. Lodge the executed mining right for registration. Mine in accordance with the issued EA and approved MWP. Publish the approved SLP in English and one dominant official language of the mine community within 30 days of its approval. It can be published on the company website or by placing hard copies in public institutions such as local schools, libraries, municipalities, and traditional council offices. The community must be notified of the publication through a local radio station or newspaper advertisement. Submit all prescribed annual reports related to the Social and Labor Plan, BEE (HDP), and monthly production statistics. Pay state royalties. This process is managed by the South African Revenue Service, and more information can be found on their website. Start mining activities within 12 months after the date of execution. If you foresee that you won't be able to start within this time, apply to the Minister of the DMPNR for an extension. This is called a Section 25 application and must be clearly motivated. Implement the SLP and review it every 5 years until you are issued with a closure certificate. If you stop operating, you must apply for care and maintenance. Now, let's move on to your rights. You are entitled to the rights granted under the Act and any other law. You have the right to enter the land with employees and equipment. If you are denied access or prevented from exercising this right, you may notify the regional manager and set out the reasons. You can mine, produce, and dispose of minerals. You can use water, subject to the National Water Act. You can carry out necessary activities related to mining. Finally, restrictions. You may appoint a contractor to mine on your behalf, but you remain liable for the mining right. You can transfer the right or an interest in it, but you must obtain the minister's consent. If you don't, the transaction is null and void. Any changes to the right, e.g., a new area or a new mineral, also require ministerial consent, Section 102. And that's the complete process of applying for a mining right, from start to finish. Of course, some parts like consultation, EIA, the social and labor plan, and appeals deserve videos of their own. We'll cover those in detail in future episodes. Remember, the MPRDA is currently under review, so some requirements may change. We'll keep you updated. Thank you for watching.